outside and I'm hollering at my son, like, hey, you need to come get her. Outside and I'm just hollering at my son, like, hey, you need to come get her.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Journey to Self podcast. And today we're going to be talking about
I'm just hollering at my son, like, hey, you need to come get her.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Journey to Self podcast. And today we're going to be talking about
I'm just hollering at my son, like, hey, you need to come get her.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Journey to Self podcast. And today we're going to be talking about
I'm just hollering at my son, like, hey, you need to come get her.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Journey to Self podcast. And today we're going to be talking about
I'm just hollering at my son, like, hey, you need to come get her.
where is this streaming? All right. Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Journey to Okay, I got it. All right. Apologies. All right. Welcome to the Journey to Self podcast. This evening, we're going to be talking about vulnerability and opening up your heart. All right, ladies, let's dive right in. Today, we wanted to talk about vulnerability because this is something that's coming up for all of us in our lives, but it's taking such a different shape for each and every one of us. So let's dive right in. I'm going to turn it over to you, Lora, to talk to us about a very vulnerable moment that you were having and a tender moment that you were having last night after trick-or-treaters and after the Halloween festivities. And then let's go around and talk about the different angles and how we're experiencing life right now in a very authentic and honest way. So, Laura, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Vicki. So it hasn't just been one day. It's been, I think everything that we experience leads up to the next experience. So the eclipse was a really profound, energetic time for me. And I didn't even know it until I looked back, but I did feel some kind of transition starting. My awareness of it was a lot deeper since then. And the messages that I got was slow down. The life that you're needing to put more meaning into is right in front of you. Look in the places that you're not looking. Find what you can find in those moments with those people. And ultimately, there was so much purpose in front of me that I was missing out on it. So that kind of what started this whole process of me just slowing down. Like I stopped spending so much time on the computer. I stopped trying things just to see if they would work. I stopped creating new processes to see what would happen. I just started spending more time with myself. And what I found happened from that is that I became very present with me and the life around me that's going on around me. And it's really hard to put into words because I had some experiences before that where I'm like, what was it like in August, where my compassion just like took a deep dive overnight. Like I became so much more compassionate. It was actually more like 3 days and I was like this transformation. But anyways, so the experience that I had yesterday, just to kind of jump to that, is that I normally have trained myself to lay down and go to sleep. I quiet my mind and some type of meditation, and then I'm sound asleep. And that did not happen last night. Last night, when I went to go to bed, my thoughts were really loud and they were deep and they were profound and they were asking for some reason. I was like, it was these questions like, have you felt that pain in your body before? What is that? Oh, you know, that noise that's kind of like, you shouldn't have posted that. Like just all of these thoughts that come up, like that is not normal for me because I've at least trained my mind enough that when it's time to go to bed, it's time to go to bed. But I had a experience where, just a thought came up and it said, the thought was just, forgive yourself. Like you haven't forgiven yourself for everything. And I was like for what, And I was going through my memory bank of every situation I've been in with a partner, with my daughter, with anytime I felt any kind of shame or regret or any kind of sting of an emotion at all. And I realized that I hadn't fully forgiven myself for all of these moments of what I would call a bad decision, or like putting my daughter in harm's way with like me being in a toxic relationship. And I didn't realize how much I was still affected by that. And when I was trying to heal and forgive that person who was toxic, there was just like a little bit there. And I realized yesterday that that's what it was. It wasn't forgiving that person that I was in a relationship with. It was a deepening or a deeper forgiveness of myself, or even, letting someone come in between my daughter and I for years. I mean, I'm talking about for like years. And she didn't have her mom in the way that she should have. If I would have been of better, my perception, if I would have been a better decision maker, but I couldn't have known, so I was forgiving myself for all of those moments, that being the biggest one that I thought I had forgiven myself for. But there was a lot, it wasn't a lot to forgive myself for. There was just a lot of small things like, oh yeah, I did that. That was a strange decision, but I accept that. I find the acceptance in myself. I find the peace in myself, to say that I did my best, and to be with me and show myself compassion, because I couldn't have known what I know now, or I would have chose different. So that was really deep and profound. That was a thought that, that's why I'm so tired today. I didn't sleep very well because it was like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, okay, you have to stop this. And then there was a part two, and the part two was Lora, be with yourself in those times. And then I saw myself, 2017 was one of the hardest years that I went through. I remember I said, I give myself a year, and then I give myself permission to check out if I can't figure out how to heal myself. And I remember how terrible I felt and how hopeless and lost and injured and broken. And I was like, it might be too late for me, because I had just struggled so much. And so I went in through the illusion of time, and I sat next to myself on the bed, and I held my hand, and I said, you're going to get through this, Lora, and you're going to be a catalyst for a lot of people. So keep pushing, keep pushing on. And I went through every one of those moments where I was at my lowest low that I could remember. And I was with myself. And all of them, I just pictured myself. Whether I could see me or not was irrelevant, because I couldn't. When we feel very alone, we don't see anybody else. So I just imagined that I was invisible, but I was comforting myself, saying, you're going to get through this. And I felt that. I actually, strangely enough, when I was at my lowest lows, I felt a little bit of hope every once in a while. And I'm wondering, since time is an illusion, like how much of my future self was there with me? How much of my future self is here with me now, So I thought that was pretty profound. But I sat with myself, and I gave myself the love that I needed and the company that I needed, so that when I was feeling very lost in the past, I could have been the person that I needed at the time. So that was my experience yesterday. But, all in all, it hasn't just been, it's been getting more profound as like I said, as November came. But I also did sit for like a good few hours sometime in the night with just my heart chakra like just wide open, and me thinking like, is there a wall is this what it feels like all the time? Is there like a wall that I close and open, and just bringing the awareness to how good it felt, because it is like you're flying and you're free, and like it feels like I was much more powerful than I ever realized in that moment. So when it comes to being vulnerable, we're all human, and we go through things that teach us to close our heart. But what I recognized last night is that when my heart chakra is open, there's nothing that can hurt me. And when my heart chakra is closed, I don't get to feel as deeply as I want to. So that was my lesson. And the only other thing I'll say about vulnerability is I think we all, as far as our human experience goes, feels a need to protect ourselves. I'm getting to the point where I don't feel that need anymore, because I don't feel threatened by anything or anyone, which is amazing, because I never thought I would say that. I always had some kind of, I got through relationship trauma and life fears and everything, but I don't feel threatened, and I don't feel in danger in the world anymore. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how my days go. If my heart chakra just stays wide open and is never like closed off, I'm really interested to seeing how this new year for me unfolds. So that's what I wanted to share, and I'll hand it over to the next person, Chrissy.
It's so beautiful. And when you talk about the mom guilt, I think we're all moms here. And I think there's so many people who are listening who are probably moms and dads who are like, because you feel like you just fucked up your kids sometimes. You know what I mean? Like you're just like, oh my gosh, what did I do to this person that I created? This person who trusted me. But we do have to realize that we didn't know what we know now. When we get in these toxic relationships and we deal with these different situations, we don't know. Like we don't know any different. So we really can't. We have to forgive ourselves. Like I'm a student of A Course in Miracles, and I kind of got off track for a while, but I'm doing the trainings again every day, and that's all what it's all about. It's about forgiveness. Forgiveness for other people, forgiveness for yourself, forgiveness. And so it's something I think we all work on as parents. I think that's just I don't know. I think it's just common, we just have to understand. So for anybody watching, if you are a parent, that's the first thing I want to say is just like understanding that you did the best you could. You've done the best you could. You're doing the best you can, and give yourself some slack, and give your parents some slack because they did the best they could, all of it. I mean, we do the best we can. So yeah, I've had some issues with vulnerability lately. I like to think that I'm a pretty vulnerable person. I tend to wear my heart on my sleeve. I am an Aries, but I'm also a Cancer rising, which is very emotional. And I feel like I do a good job at that. But I also feel like I have closed myself off a lot in the past year. And it's crazy because I am like a relationship coach, and I do that because like I know like signs to look for, I know like how to help people, but for myself, and I'm being completely vulnerable here, like so I don't know, it's a little scary, but I feel like for myself though, I've been through so much when it comes to relationships with other men or with friends that I just felt like I needed to close myself off to anything like that. Even with you girls, again, I'm being so vulnerable right now, but there's been times that I'm like, I don't even know if I want to do this anymore. And I think that it's because I'm just afraid of letting people in. I'm afraid of like letting you guys in. I'm afraid of letting men in. I'm afraid of letting anybody in because I'm like, oh my gosh, if I let them in, then they're gonna see my flaws and I'm gonna just be hurt. So but I have a psychic who's amazing, and she has told me that I need to open my heart chakra and I need to start connecting with people in person, not just online, because I have so many friends online. Like I could go anywhere in the country and stay with somebody. You know what I mean? Like I could just take a vacation. I have so many friends. but she's like, you need to connect with people online, or I mean, on in person. And she's like, you're focusing on business because you are avoiding connecting with people in person. And she's been telling me this. And so I've been trying. It's been really rough. Um, so yesterday I meet somebody, and it's a restaurant I go to all the time. And I and like there's times like I'll be like, I'm not gonna go there today, and I'll just like feel this call to go there. And so really cool people, all this stuff. And so a guy comes in, and he um starts talking about something about the food. And I'm always like sitting kind of close to like where the bar area is, but like on a table, because like I go there because like I can't, I'm a nurse and I do home health, so I can't really work when I come home. So I'll go there because I can like sit with my tablet and finish my charting, and like and then get it all done for like an hour, and then I'll just come home. So I'm there, and I was getting ready to leave, but I talked to all the wait staff, and so I was talking to them, and this guy walks in, and he starts talking about, I'm not going to share a lot of what he talked about because it was kind of vulnerable for him, but he starts talking about different things. And then he starts talking about spirituality and like how he was like pulled over to the other side at one point in time, and like these things that like I just resonate with. And so I ended up being there like 4 hours later. Like I was still there talking to this guy. And it was just a really good connection that I ended up having. And I felt my heart chakra open up. Like it's almost like, I don't even know how to describe it, because I felt this energy within my body of this just opening, and this like love for this person, not like love in that sense for this person, but like love for the soul that he was in general. You know what I mean? Like just that soul connection, like of just everybody, like everybody that was there. And I just felt this overwhelming sense of love for these people, this guy, the wait staff, like all the people there that I was talking to, because there was other people like I was talking to them too. And we just had this, and you know, again, like there's no outcome attached to this. Like maybe he's just going to be a really good friend. He's somebody maybe who's just coming into my life to teach me how to open my heart chakra again. I don't know what it's about, but I definitely have no doubt, like 100% sure that the universe directed that into my life. You know, they directed, because he's actually not, he doesn't even live here. He lives like an hour or two away, but he's here house sitting. He's never even been to this restaurant before. So I have no doubt that like the universe directed that to me just so that I could like feel that heart chakra opening, like the energy. I'm probably gonna see him again before the week's end, probably tomorrow. It sounds like he messaged me not so long ago, but you know, the point of that story is, you know, again, we're talking about opening the heart chakra and being vulnerable. And so for me, I can tell other people how to do this, but it's like it's been so hard for me. And when you are hurt in relationships, regardless how that relationship, like whether it was friendship or romantic, you know, you do, I'm sure you girls know, I know, Lora, you know, like it's really hard to open back up. You know, I know that you talk about you and Robert, like when you guys met, like you were what, friends for how long? You know what I mean? Like, and because you were so, I'm sure you were just afraid, you know, you were afraid to open yourself back up. And you know, and I did get in my head, like I was in my head like, okay, did I tell him too much information? Like I shouldn't have really told him this, maybe I was too vulnerable. But then I was like, no, fuck that. Because like you have to eventually learn to trust people, and you have to not just trust people, but trust yourself. Trust yourself that that you have learned enough, and that you have developed and grown enough that you're going to realize when things are toxic or when things aren't going the way that they're aligned with you, and you're going to walk away. So you have to just trust yourself, is my point in all of this. Like, trust yourself that you know enough now, and that you are in a place where you can, you know, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Like it's not, you're not throwing all the cards in there. You're just open, and you're just grateful, and you're just like, I'm just going to see what happens. And if nothing happens and you get a great friend, great. If you start recognizing signs of like, okay, this isn't aligned with me, great. You know, I've lost a group of friends this past year. I lost them in junior high. I've lost them again this year because they weren't aligned with me. And like, it's rough for a minute, but then you just realize like, okay, that group of friends just is no longer on the same path as me, and it's okay. And you just learn to trust yourself enough to know when that happens. So that's my the thing I wanted to say about this and opening the heart chakra and just being vulnerable. So I will turn it over to I think Chelsey's next. So I can't remember, but I will turn it over to the next person. So yeah.
Ah, that was good. Thank you. Yeah, vulnerability is
Wait, Chelsey, 1 second. I'm sorry. So before we go to you, I wanted to share with you. I don't know if you guys are looking at the YouTube live stream, but we're getting some comments. And so some comments are keep your heart closed, sharing yourself is overrated. And I said, I know how that feels. And so I think that this could be an interesting piece to talk about too, right? Like the fear that we're in when our heart is closed, right? Because our natural state is to be in a state of love, right? So anyways, I do want to hear your story, Chelsey, but I wanted to share some of the comments and feedback that we're getting.
Yeah, I'm not looking at that. So they said like keep your heart closed because you know what? Whoever said that, like I get it. Like I've been closed. I'm sorry. I just have to touch on that because I've been closed off since January. I have not even kissed a person like since January. Like it's literally like Vicky knows. I've talked to her so much. And it really I get it. Like because you want to protect yourself, but eventually you do have to start to like open that heart chakra and it's rough. And I don't know, you can message us. I can give you some tips. I really don't even know, but yeah, just
maybe we can
okay.
talk about how do you open up that heart chakra because maybe
Well, this
after
is
Chelsey. Yeah.
this is the why too, is that I wrote down a couple of things. Is that I was, I've been building businesses forever and working on myself forever. And I had a conversation with a good friend on Friday, and we were talking about how when we stopped trying, things just were happening. Well, I didn't try to stop being everything or anything that I wasn't. I just stopped trying. I just stopped trying to do anything but go deeper in myself. I stopped doing so much. And what happened was I think I got so many positive reviews on Google. I got so many new potential clients. I didn't even do anything, you guys. So it just this attraction of when I was opening my heart chakra, the attraction of the right people are coming into my life, my tribe, the people that I'm meant to help.
Mhm.
And also that same thing happened when I got into my relationship with Robert, is that I knew that I was safe with him eventually. I had to find that trust
Eventually.
and
Yeah.
stuff eventually. I had to prove it to my brain. But without that, I wouldn't have what we have now, and what we have is amazing. So there's a lot of reasons why we want to do that. So
But
I
it took
just
you,
wanted to throw it out there.
didn't it take you like 2 years or something, Laura? Like, wasn't it
Oh
like a
yeah.
long time? Yeah.
Oh
So,
yeah. Yeah. We developed a really good friendship first, which
French,
was,
yeah,
yeah, which was necessary. So
I thought. Okay. We can move on to Chelsey now. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine, you're fine. I'm laughing at one of the comments. Uh, okay. So vulnerability is basically what I do as an artist, right? I write and I've got my books, and like it was basically opening up to myself in a very vulnerable way, but it was also like tapping into my soul. At the time I probably didn't realize it, but it was a really huge part of it. So when I was younger, I was teased a lot. And I was at a small school, so it's not like I had a lot of opportunity to escape the teasing and the making fun of, and it went on for a long time. It really hurt my ego and how I viewed myself. So throughout the years, I was embarrassed to show who I was, basically. Going forward and throughout life, it was a lot of masking and just trying not to show who I was or the vulnerable parts of my identity. But it also turned into this kind of thing where I didn't even know who I was anymore. And that was probably one of the hardest parts, was my late 20s. I really had to, I started diving into like the self-discovery, kind of going through what we still call spiritual awakening and a lot of that. And it was a slow, tedious process at the time. But I've noticed, oops, sorry, my phone's ringing. But I've noticed that through all that process, the vulnerability is one of my favorite aspects of myself, and I share it so openly now online or even on Facebook. And I share my wins, I share my losses, I share how I'm really feeling. But one thing I've really noticed is when I'm able to share the most vulnerable parts of myself, I feel a lot better. And there's a lot of lessons in that. Um, so in a way, it really is kind of like tapping back into my soul a little bit and my identity, and kind of sifting through a lot of the dirt, to better understand myself. So that was a huge part. So, then when I started releasing like my first book, vulnerability hit again, because I was like, oh my goodness, people, like, who's going to read this, or what are people going to think? It was very
Your
hard.
book is awesome, by the way. I just want to say I've got it on Kindle and I've read parts of it. I haven't finished it yet, but it's great. I just wanted to throw it out there. Go ahead.
Yeah,
And what's the name of the book, Chelsey?
living. The first one is Living Life Metaphorically: A Journey to Waking Up, and it's really touching all of those core
Your
beliefs.
journals at first, it was like a journal, right? And then you turn it into a book.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
you
was
guys
a
go get
journal.
it. It's great. Yeah. Go
And
ahead.
where can people
Yeah.
buy it? And where I'm going to be your like little ambassador. And where can people buy it?
Amazon.
Awesome.
It's on Amazon right now.
Yay.
Yeah.
Go out and buy her book, honestly. Support Chelsey, but the book is amazing. Yep.
It really is. She's very vulnerable. She really delves into some shit. You guys get it. Yeah. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Chelsey.
All right.
I'm a very emotional person too. Like if they color chart your personalities, I am definitely blue. And so that was a big one. But I've realized that I've gained a lot of friends, and I've aligned to a lot of the right people in the right categories through all of that. And it's a very open space, not just for me to share what's vulnerable and what's deeply going on, but for other people, it's relatable too. So it's one of those things like, last night I was having a moment, be feeling vulnerable. I'm going through a lot of changes in my personal life, and I'm basically having to like restructure and replan my future a little bit. So it's kind of adds stress and vulnerability, but mostly stress at this point, because the vulnerability, I've got a good relationship with vulnerability now, but it's a hard one. So I went on there and, I made the post, and one of my friends who's also a life coach had asked me if I felt better just expressing it. And I said, yeah, actually, I feel a lot better just expressing it. And it has to do with the heart chakra and the throat chakra. We're not supposed to close it in. And it's funny because we're all afraid that maybe people will tease us or not relate to it. But honestly, it's extremely relatable. We're all human and we're all going through it. So like one of the things that I do publicly and openly now is to share the evolution of myself, my own humanity and what's going on, and what that looks like for other people to be able to mirror it in themselves a little bit, and hopefully inspire them to also feel that they can do that too. So I love it. It's been very fun. And at this point, I quickly will go on Facebook and write it. And sometimes I'll think, I'm sure some people are probably think I'm just looking for attention, or people would have the negative comments towards it maybe. But I was like, it's so much more in depth than that though. And it really, for anyone listening, it does feel good to express your vulnerability, because I think sometimes when you let it out, you can start processing it. And it's a good way to resolve it a little bit.
So go buy the book, people. Go buy her book. You want to hear Chelsey get vulnerable, and go buy it.
That's very poetic.
That's great. So I think it's my turn. And so the most vulnerable thing I can say is that I'm not really vulnerable I'm not 100% open and vulnerable with anyone other than myself and my journals. And that's the truth. So, I'm working through it, but that's the real truth, because I still continue to hold a lot inside. And I think it's reflected in my content, and it's reflected in the way that I live. So that's my truth. I continue to hold it in.
Did it feel good saying that?
It's a beautiful truth. It's a beautiful truth though, Vicky, because you're being vulnerable right now by telling us that, by telling the world that. So yeah.
That's the truth. And you know, but you know, hearing you three speak is incredibly empowering because it gives me hope to one day to have that courage, because I think it's scary. And it's scary because we judge ourselves. I don't think we think, the mind believes that we're afraid of other people's judgment, but the only judgment that we fear is our own. And that is what holds us back. And that is what holds me back. And I know that now. And I hope and pray that my heart one day does open up fully, and I know I can, and I know I hopefully will, but I'm still on that journey. So
It's a really good mirror.
You will open up, because I think that I haven't known you very long, but I think that you've made such progress in the time that I've known you, and you have really opened up more and more to all of us, I think. So I think that you are growing. You know what I mean? Like, you're growing, girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess I guess I would say to the people who are still struggling with that, right? With being 100% open and vulnerable, and still having some of that fear, right? That it's a journey, right? It's not a destination. It's a journey that we're all on. And it's okay. No matter where you're at in your journey, it's okay. And, I'm making peace with at least being okay with where I am at. And, at least my journaling, for those of you who can't express yourself verbally, who seem to be extremely outgoing and, gregarious on the outside, but extremely closed off on the inside, at least grab a notebook and journal, because that has been my outlet. I journal, and the paper, it can hold all your truths without any judgment. So
maybe that's part of your soul's journey too. Like, we all come here for a purpose. Maybe your part of your purpose is learning how to be vulnerable, and that's hard in this freaking society that we live in, who wants to close everything off. So, like, I think you're doing an amazing job. You are.
So, let me ask you ladies a question. So for those of us who are struggling with this, right? Who still have the fears, what advice would you give? Like, how were you able to find the courage to just come out with it,
Do you want us to go around? Like, start with Lora? Do you want us to start with Lora?
Let's have a conversation, because I think this is really deep and meaningful. And I'm here and I'm learning. I'm here as a student more so than anything else, right?
I jumped into it.
Yeah.
Deep down, I wanted to connect and share. And it was me getting over my own shame and the negative talk within myself that was stopping me. And as soon as I started just jumping into it, it kind of flowed like water, like a water faucet that I turned on. And I had moments where I would stop myself and think about it and be like, what if people are judging me? And I realized, I'm judging me. And it's a good lesson to learn. Like, that's why I said it was a mirror. It's something that mirrors back our own insecurities on it. And not everyone is necessarily thinking what we think they're thinking. From my experience, a lot of people find it to be brave and empowering in its own way. So it's us kind of stopping ourselves, I think, from being vulnerable.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's kind of hard a little bit to describe this because I've always kind of wore my heart on my sleeve. But there's been moments, especially since my awakening. And I told you guys about the Nashville trip and how I felt about that. And I did a lot of meditating in the room on that trip. And I was told later on, this is why I kind of distanced myself from this group of girls, but I was told later on that I was being called weird. Me and one of the other girls were like meditating. We were being called weird, and we were basically just being called like, there was just weird things going on in that room just because we were meditating. And I just had to it really hurt for a minute, but I had to like just turn into like God and spirit guides and kind of ask for the guidance and understand that like, that was okay that they felt that way because they didn't understand. And then, I guess I don't know. I've always been kind of vulnerable, and I guess I've just always had this outlook of like I didn't care what people thought about me, but that's just my personality. So I'm sorry, Vicky. I can't. I guess I get really. I don't. It's hard for me to give tips because I've just always felt like that. That I don't give a shit what people think about me, even though I did in a way. I've just kind of been like, but now I'm kind of opening that up. I guess I'll talk in the dating sense where I'm like just kind of like, in the past, that was where my issue was with dating. And so I would go on these dates of like, oh, I want this person to like me. I want them to like me. And so I've had to get vulnerable with that aspect and be like, if they don't like me, it's fine because like maybe I don't like them. You know what I mean? So I've just had to like, yeah, just kind of open up to that idea of like, what do I like about this person before I even go any further? And if I don't like them, then, and if they don't like me, it's okay. So I don't know. I don't know if that helps because that probably doesn't help. It's really not a lot. I honestly don't know because I've just always kind of wore my heart on my sleeve, I guess, in a way. I don't know.
I've always been in the past a pretty vulnerable person, except for when I was really hurt. That's when I noticed I just closed off. So, um, actually, as a child, I was very sensitive. So I learned to keep to myself at a very early age. And then I've been writing a lot of poetry. Like I have journals of poetry that's how I kind of express myself when I couldn't find an outlet. Creativity too. I play the guitar and some other
I didn't know
painting.
that. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. I also like to paint. So those were ways for me to express parts of me that I was not. I also sing. I don't know if I'm good at it, but those are those are ways for me to express parts of me that I was not really. I didn't feel safe to show other people um, all the time. But I know there's a couple things, Vicky. I know I talked to you once about courage. We had a conversation, and I was saying how courage isn't something that we are, it's something that we do. And what I realized about that is I've been trying to connect with some people in my life that are very closed off and very protected. And I've been trying to not really like earn their trust or anything, but to connect so that we can learn together, build together, and grow together. And I had to look really deep at like what was getting in the way of that. And you guys probably know that I was a private investigator in the time, and I was very disarming. I was very disarming, and I worked on a lot of cases where when I first, it still happens to me when I talk to people at the grocery store, they tell me their whole life story in like 3 seconds flat. So I had to learn how to shut that off. So I was wondering, like with this specific person, why is that not working? Why is it that I'm not disarming to this person so that we can grow together, and that we can have a conversation about where they are and where I am and how we can meet, and that connection that I'm trying to nourish and nurture. And so with asking myself that question, I realized that I wasn't doing my part of being positive and be not like maybe just raising my vibration when there's a seeming low, or being like just making them feel really safe and things like that. So So that comes to mind. But the other thing about vulnerability, when in my experience, is that like when we're kids, we are vulnerable and we're not afraid of any of those parts of ourselves. And what I learned is there was parts of myself that I became afraid of as I got older, like I said, and then I just kept them hidden for whatever reason. But vulnerability and opening back up to myself is who I truly am. And what I share with someone else is what I choose. I might not share with someone what I would share with you guys. That's totally what I choose. But if I'm totally 100% vulnerable with myself, I feel more solid. I feel more centered. I feel more honest. I can communicate with myself. And then I get to choose who I want to share that with. And I just wanted to say too that Vicky, you were really right about that self-judgment thing, because I was judging myself for the decisions that I made. That's where the self-forgiveness came in. um I was the only one judging myself and still holding on to like regret. Or it wasn't even regret, it was just a little bit of like, can I cut those ties and set myself free type thing. But yeah, I think it's just when we talk about vulnerability, like Chelsey said, opening up to a part of your soul, it really is just me coming deeper into who I am. And I had another insight I posted on my Facebook. I said, what would you call this chapter of your life? Mine is called You'll Never Find It Outside of You, because we have this habit of looking outside of us for stuff. And I've been constantly directed since November of 2015 to look within. And it finally, I think I've looked everywhere else. And so that's why I think this transformation has, for me, has kind of like opened up over the last few weeks, is because it's all within and it's all internal. And we're never going to find it outside. Never. We could get some direction and maybe some intellectual understanding of things, but everything we're really looking for is inside, and that vulnerability is part of it. So
exactly. And I also think, just to touch on that a little bit, and Vicky, I think it's just also recognizing your own power and recognizing what I mean, like, Vicky, you are such an amazing human being. It's why I was messaging you last night after that whole situation with me happened, because I felt so open with you. Like, I felt like you were the person, even though I've never met you in person. I felt like you were the person, like, I could tell that to, and you would just get it. Like, you would understand where I was coming from. And you sent me back the most beautiful message ever. I was literally, I'm in tears right now. I was in tears when I listened to it this morning. And so I think it's just being able to recognize that about ourselves. And that comes from, I just think, inner work. But just understand, Vicky, that, I mean, we're all amazing people. And I'm just touching on you because I know that this is an issue for you, and being vulnerable. And I think that, I just think you're amazing and you have so much to offer the world. We all do. So.
Sweet. No, I think you're all right. I'm going to bring this back to our podcast is called Journey to Self.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what this whole journey is about. And, one of my biggest lessons or transformations has been thus far, at least, that I'm able to be open and honest with myself.
Yeah.
And that, to me, that took me years of introspection. Like right before we got on the podcast, I was asking you about your spiritual awakening journey, right? And Chelsey said, oh, it took me a while. I kind of went through that. Like, it took me a really, really long time. And as part of that was a ton of introspection within, to understand, to start to at least feel into, like, where were all of these patterns, hurts, pains, self-doubt, like lack of self-love, all of these things, right? Like guilt, shame, like all of these patterns, where were they coming from? And really having to go through a ton of introspection, and also forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others in my life, and really taking my power back and knowing that I am a powerful being. I'm a very powerful, we all are. Every single one of us is a very powerful being, and that we have the choice, right, of how we live every single day. So that has been my journey, and it's been really a journey to self. So at least like I'm honest with me, and I'm honest with the pieces of paper on which I write. And that in itself has been huge, at least for me, because I'd never been honest with myself prior to this journey.
It's hard. It's hard to be honest with ourselves. I think all of us can relate to that, and probably the people watching who can relate to that. So
There's something Laura said when she first started speaking, and she was saying how she went back and she showed herself support, just even if, like going to her past self.
Mm-hmm.
And I had an experience like that too, because once I started getting into like the internal family system and kind of psychoanalyzing myself into different parts, I was having, like this last year, I was having a moment kind of struggling with some shame and feeling bad about some of the decisions in my life and how it progressed into very life-changing moments. And I remember at one point I was having stomach pain for a long time, and I didn't really know where it was coming from or why. And I had already worked with my inner child, my masculine and my feminine side of it. But then I started targeting concepts of going back in the past, kind of like what Laura was saying. And I was like, okay, so I went back to 26-year-old Chelsey. And I remember the way I felt then. And I really just felt like at that time I was back in my Houston apartment, and like imagine she was sitting on her bed, depressed and lost, and how I felt then. And I was in that moment, I was making the decisions that were pivoting my life, right? So I went back to the moment where it was pivoting. And I remember just hugging myself. And I felt like, when we go through experiences or we shame ourselves, we leave a part of ourself behind. And I kid you not, my stomach felt so much better just going back and like hugging myself, hugging 26-year-old Chelsey, telling her it was okay. She didn't do anything wrong, and it would be much, everything's fine. And it was this huge ordeal, but it was kind of like the internal family system. But instead of doing an internal part, I was going back in time a little bit and supporting myself. So I thought it was cool that Laura said that, because I've kind of done that in my own way a little bit. And now I also go, a couple months ago when I was hitting a road for some bigger decisions, I kept thinking, I want to connect with future Chelsey, because right now I'm stressed out and I want to connect with future Chelsey a little bit. And it's the idea of supporting yourself, even through some of the uncomfortable parts, it's forgiving yourself, loving yourself, but also bringing it back. And I noticed after I had done that, not only did my stomach feel better, but I was also experiencing some aspects of myself that I had forgotten, and it might just be little things, but I started noticing it in the daytime. Like I was bringing back parts of myself that I had kind of did actually lose a little bit. And it was really interesting for like a week after that.
That's interesting that you say that, Chelsey. Vicky, one thing I wanted to say is that so I don't go through life like feeling a lot of pain like I used to, because I was just a disaster. Now it's like the more I relax my body when I'm meditating or laying down, I can reach some of those parts that may not be completely, I don't want to say completely healed, because there's always some level of healing, I feel like. But the more I feel that and sit with that, it was equally proportionate to the amount of love I feel opening in my heart. And through that, the vulnerability comes through, I think. So the more pain, because we can't block. There was some time when I was going through trauma. I'm so sensitive to energy, but I would just block everything because I couldn't handle the negative stuff. But then I realized I was losing all the positive stuff too. So then I realized, okay, I have to open myself up to feeling the negative energy if I want to feel the positive energy too. So they really do work hand in hand. They're like two sides of the same coin. So I feel like when we try not to feel the negative stuff, we end up blocking the vulnerability and feeling the positive stuff. So there's that. And then Chelsey, I was just kind of grinning when you were saying like with your future self, because now I feel like there's like an 80-year-old version of me, like hanging out with me, like giving me tips, like like the one who's figured out all the stuff that I'm trying to do, or even better. Like I feel like I'm supported by her. Like I it's actually really cool now because I feel like I have her support and I can like pick her brain and like ask her questions and like,
She
check in on
wants
her
you to do that.
wisdom.
I feel like our
Yeah.
future self wants us to do that. You know what I mean? Like they're just there, like waiting for us to be like, yeah, come talk to me.
Yeah, it's really cool. And it feels too, there's that part, Chelsey, you probably experienced self-abandonment at some point in your life. And I really did self-abandon myself. Like when everybody else abandoned me, I learned to abandon me. And then I was like, oh, that sucks. And then I had to, I mean, it was like a lot worse than, oh, that sucks. It was devastating. And I had to learn how to, reestablish a relationship with myself. And so now just feeling like that all these different versions of me can support me in everything that I'm doing, especially opening up to the world behind the internet. I mean, that's pretty cool because there's an endless amount of versions of each of us. So that's a lot of support, plus
Mhm.
everybody else that's supporting us, right? Energetically and physically.
I've met some of the best people since opening up and really bringing myself truly to the table. And it's been the most rewarding. I think the last few years have been the most rewarding out of my life so far, in that concept.
Same.
For
Same here.
sure.
Absolutely. All right. Well, any parting thoughts? Any closing
This
thoughts?
is just such a great conversation. I feel like this is one of the best episodes that we've done. Because it was just so vulnerable. Like we were all just like having a conversation. Like we could talk all day long, every day about whatever. All I want to say is if anybody has any ideas that they want to hear us talk about, anybody who's watching this, just message. I don't know how this whole podcast thing works now that we're doing that, but you can, I guess, message on Vicky's YouTube or however the podcast works. Like, just message us. We are here to serve you guys, and we would love to just delve into so many different topics that you would like to hear. So,
Well,
My part. Oh, go ahead.
no,
Did you
no,
want to
I
say
was
something?
just
Oh,
saying.
okay. My parting words are that we can use almost anything as a distraction away from ourselves.
Mhm.
We could do it with business. We could do it with emails. We could do it with computers. We could do it with overindulging in anything, exercise. We could do it with anything. And what I realized with myself is that, and I'll probably turn this into a Facebook post because it's been on my mind for like 3 or 4 days now. So it means that other people probably need to hear it too, is that so many people avoid the present moment. And that
Yeah.
is the only moment that exists. And in that moment is absolutely everything we're looking for, including vulnerability, including an open heart, including the people that are supposed to come into our lives. And so my parting thoughts are just don't be one of those people if you want to live your highest expression of yourself and your life to the fullest, because that moment is where everything lives. And I hope that I get to enjoy as many of these moments as I have been lately and, really stay here because it's some of the best times I think I'm going to have in my life moving forward.
Mhm.
Yeah. No, for sure. I didn't know, Chelsey, if you wanted to say anything.
I know I was going to say that was beautiful.
Yeah.
I don't have anything else to say, I guess. Except for good night, everybody.
Yes. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. This was a fascinating and a wonderful conversation. I know I came into this, I think, more as a student than as a teacher. And I'm so grateful to you, ladies, for being so courageous, so open, so vulnerable, and for paving the way for those of us, right, who are stepping into our power, who are finding that courage, who are shining a light on our inner selves, and who are stepping more and more into just being in the here and the now. So I am so grateful to you and so grateful to you listening, and come back to our next episode where we will be covering more topics on the journey to self. Thank you.
Love you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
See you next week.
Bye.